If God is supposedly all-powerful, why couldn't he simply wave a hand and forgive humanity? Why did the creator of the universe require a brutal execution on a cross to pardon human wrongdoing? We tend to think that absolute power means the ability to do absolutely anything without constraint, like snapping your fingers to wipe a slate clean. But a being defined by absolute love operates under a strict set of rules. The immediate problem with the expectation of a quick pardon is that instant, consequence-free forgiveness ignores the mechanics of justice. If you bypass the penalty for a wrong, the wrong itself is left unaddressed. Wiping away guilt without exacting a cost doesn't actually demonstrate perfect love. It breaks the basic laws of reality and justice by treating actual harm as if it never happened. To see how this works mechanically, we can pull this concept out of cosmic theology and put it into a standard everyday courtroom. Imagine a perpetrator walks in, standing trial for a horrific crime, severe, undeniable abuse. But instead of facing a sentence, he looks at the bench and simply says, "I'm really sorry." Now imagine the judge looks down and says, "I have the authority to do whatever I want in this room. You are forgiven, you can go free." This animated diagram illustrates the exact problem. When you plot the immense weight of a severe crime on one side of a scale and place absolutely no penalty on the other, the system fails completely. The public wouldn't view that judge as merciful. They would recognize him as deeply corrupt. Absolute justice demands an equal penalty. Because of this, a perfectly just God is logically bound by his own unbending nature to enforce that penalty. He cannot simply ignore wrongdoing. The best way to map out this dilemma is through a narrative analog. Picture a distant kingdom ruled by a monarch famous for possessing two unshakable traits. He is perfectly just, and he is perfectly loving. A crisis emerges when someone begins stealing from the royal treasury. The king, bound by his commitment to justice, issues a decree that the thief will receive 10 lashes. The thefts continue. He raises it to 20, then 30. Finally, the king issues his absolute final decree. The penalty for stealing from the treasury will be 40 lashes. And the physical reality of that number meant one thing: a definitive death sentence. But the thefts don't stop. Eventually, the culprit is caught, and a massive anomaly hits the legal system. The thief is the king's own beloved daughter. An impossible tension grips the kingdom. The king is forced into a corner. He must either execute his own child to maintain absolute justice, or he must corrupt his own law to save her. The day of the execution arrives. The entire kingdom gathers as the king's daughter is brought to the podium to face the deadly sentence. The king refuses to bend the rules. He orders the executioner to proceed, ensuring his absolute justice remains completely intact. But just as the executioner brings his arm forward to deliver the lethal blow, the king yells for him to stop. He steps down from the throne, sheds his own royal protection, and wraps his entire body completely around his daughter, shielding her. The executioner objects, warning that the heavy lashes will fall on the king and kill him. But the king issues his final ruling. The sentence must stand. The object of the punishment doesn't matter, as long as the penalty is paid. This introduces the mechanism of substitutionary atonement. The law was perfectly fulfilled. The deadly debt was paid in full, but the consequence was entirely absorbed by the lawmaker himself. If you take the exact mechanics of that sacrifice and map them onto the historical event of Jesus of Nazareth, the logic of the crucifixion locks perfectly into place. This diagram visualizes the opening paradox between justice and love. On the left side, we have absolute justice, where a penalty must be paid. On the right side, absolute love, where mercy is freely given. The overlapping center, forming the shape of a cross, is the sole logical mechanism in the universe that can satisfy both conditions simultaneously. Look at the left side of the diagram. The execution on the cross satisfies the demands of justice by fully enforcing the rigid legal requirement for human rebellion. The penalty is paid without compromise. Now look at the right side. God steps down into reality to physically absorb that exact penalty himself, taking the deadly consequence away from the guilty. That is the ultimate mechanical manifestation of absolute love. Jesus didn't have to die because God lacked the power to simply grant forgiveness. He died because it is the only way a completely just God can enforce his own law, while simultaneously becoming the justifier of humanity.